Welcome back to the Scotti-BYTE channel, and this is Scott. Today I want to talk about how to find and fix various hosting issues. So once you self-host more than one application in your home lab, you can run into issues that result in partial or complete outages. Assuming that you have server capacity, reliable internet, and reliable UPS backup power, problems can and will still occur. So often you need to look at the last change that you made on either your network or a server to perform a root cause analysis and to come up with a solution. This video is about an outage that I worked for almost 2 weeks before I finally found a solution. So this is my Discourse forum at discussion.scotti-byte.com. I host a lot of my show notes here, and some people come out and comment on things, and we also have other discussions. In any event, about 2 weeks ago, I went into the admin section of my discussion board, and I went over to the area that says Perform Upgrades Here. And it immediately scans, finds out whether there are any updates. And for example, right here it says that there's a new version available and you can go ahead and upgrade. And I hadn't done this upgrade for a while, but if we look back here for a moment and we look at the admin page I came from, 2 weeks ago, I believe I was at 2.9.0 beta 1. And this product is currently at beta 4. And when I had this problem 2 weeks ago, I had upgraded from beta 1, I believe, to beta 3. In any event, it was a couple of days, and I hadn't really noticed that there were any problems with it. But then I was going back to make an edit on one of my existing how-to guides. And when I did that, I discovered that it would not let me save or edit the document. What would happen was that I would get a 500 error, just like this. And it wouldn't give me any description of exactly what the error was. It would just say 500 error. So after a little bit more study, what I ended up discovering was that if I also created a new post and I tried to edit the new post with a graphic, as long as it had a graphic in it, it would not actually save. And I didn't get the 500 error, but I simply got a failed to upload file error. And so I started doing all kinds of searching, and I went out on the forums, I went out on Reddit, I did all the things that a person would do to see whether or not you could diagnose exactly what the problem was, and I wasn't really successful. So I got a lot of suggestions from the Discourse community folks, and at the time that I did the upgrade from the page where you perform the upgrade from, I didn't exactly have what I could define as a totally clean update. That is that when I looked at the update logs had a few deprecation messages in them. And anybody that's watched my channel recently knows that one of the other products that I was solving the deprecation issue with was the Rocket Chat. And with Rocket Chat, I was trying to upgrade from the mmap database engine to the Wired Tiger database engine, and upgrade from Mongo Database 4.0 all the way to Mongo Database 5.0. And I have a video on that, and it describes all of the details. So in any event, when I did see those deprecation messages, I started looking into, well, these aren't right. I should probably try to figure out exactly what they were. Moreover, I also went into the admin section and I tried to go into backups, and I tried to perform a backup. And I was able to perform a backup, and this is a backup of all the users and the database information on the board. You can see it's up to date now. I kind of wish I had saved screenshots of when everything was broken. But in any event, what I ended up doing was I downloaded, or I tried to download one of these backup files because I thought, well, if I do have kind of a corrupted version of Discourse, I'm going to go ahead and download this backup by hitting the download button, and I will go get a copy of that. So when you click the download button, if any of you do run Discourse, you know that when you click the download button, it doesn't actually download. It sends you an email, and in that email, it gives you a hyperlink to download the backup. And so I did that. It sent me the email, and I clicked on the hyperlink, and the hyperlink failed. So the next thing I had to figure out was, how do I go out and access that backup? Since I'd made a new backup, I wanted to be able to access it. And eventually I discovered that I could SSL into the terminal instance, and then I found out that I could furthermore connect inside the Docker instance, and the Docker instance actually pointed to a place outside the Docker instance, but you had to go through the Docker instance to get it. And I found the place where these backup files are stored. And then I did an RCP to get them out to another system, and life was good. So I created my new backup, or I created my new Discourse instance, which of course was the brand new 2.9.0 beta 4 here. And keep in mind, the last time that everything had run correctly was 2.9.0 beta 1, in my opinion. And so when I created the new instance and got it up and running, I tried to import, and it wouldn't even let me import the instance that I had backed up. So I went through a bunch of tests, and eventually it was like days and days later, I was able to import the instance, and I still had the same exact problem with image editing of existing posts and creating new posts that had images inside of them they wouldn't save. So, of course, I figured out that the problem was clearly 2.9.0 beta 4, and that it had some internal problem, and I was probably one of the only users who had located it, which is not unusual to me because I do implement a lot of softwares, and I do find some pretty, let's put it this way, obscure problems. So time kind of goes on, and eventually, interestingly enough, this is my Heimdall dashboard here, my Rocket Chat instance, maybe a good week later, started coming up, and it started causing some problems. And so my Rocket Chat instance started getting to where I couldn't upload an image. So if I had gone out and I had said, I want to add a post and I want to upload an image, it wouldn't upload an image. But all the images that had been uploaded previously were still inside the product and didn't have any issues. So, of course, I didn't really relate those to the Discourse problem because it wasn't exactly like the Discourse problem. And of course, it was a completely different product. So now I go into Rocket Chat trying to figure out what's going on. And all I can come to the conclusion of is this problem occurred right after I had upgraded Rocket Chat from the mmap database to the Wired Tiger engine for the database, and right after I had upgraded from Mongo 4.0 all the way to 5.0, as is indicated in this video that you see right here. So, of course, I'm figuring that since the thing that's brand new in Rocket Chat is the fact that I'm now running a new database engine and a new version of the database, and that is probably why graphics are unable to upload. So time goes on a little bit more, and I start to think in the back of my mind, I use Nginx Proxy Manager, and Nginx Proxy Manager has been known to occasionally produce some problems for me. So I very wisely go out and I look at my Nginx Proxy Manager, and I look at the error log for it, go into it, and well, that was an unfounded concern because Nginx Proxy Manager showed that the log was completely clean, showed that all the underlying security certificates were being upgraded from Let's Encrypt, and also noticed that all the things in terms of actually translating the proxy as it came in and routing it to the appropriate server were correct. And in fact, I had probably, I have quite a few applications here. You can see that on my Heimdall dashboard, I've got quite a bit, or even more so. If you look at my Monitor dashboard, you can get an idea of what my self-hosted environment looks like. So I was really concerned at this point, and I had reason to use my instance of uTransfer, which is something I may do a video on in the future. In any event, uTransfer is a little bit like a self-hosted version of something like Dropbox, or maybe even Google Drive. Not as flexible, but it's a very simple web interface and very nice to use. It's a great way to transfer large files from one place to another. And I had occasion to actually go in there and try my instance. Well, when I went in there to try that instance, interestingly enough, as soon as I would drag and drop a file on the interface, I would get all these web errors up on the screen. And keep in mind, this is like, probably a week and a half or close to 2 weeks after the original problem popped up with Discourse. And so, of course, I say, well, I haven't used my uTransfer instance in a while. I'm going to go ahead and go out there and reload it. Maybe the container's corrupted. I could bring it back from a backup, but it's easy enough to go out and reload this thing. So I go out and I grab a new copy of uTransfer, load it up, set everything up the way I had it before. It works like a champ. I go to drag and drop a file on it, and it's starting to spew all the same exact errors that the original copy had, which I thought was kind of interesting. So I said, well, maybe there was an upgrade in this thing. It's a Docker container. Maybe drag and drop isn't working anymore. Let me actually go click on the option and have it give a pop-up menu where it can upload something. So I went to go do it, and it threw out all kinds of errors. Now, mind you, they were really weird web errors. They weren't things like I couldn't really upload the file. It really looked like there was an internal problem with PHP, and that didn't surprise me because uTransfer uses PHP, and so I try not to use PHP all that much, but that one product does use it, and it's been reliable, well, up until now. So anyway, long and short of it, I end up talking to my buddy Brian over at Awesome Open Source. We had a Jitsi session together, and we talked for a while. And after our discussion, I was asking him how he had his Rocket Chat hosted and what he was doing with it. And he was using reverse proxy. And I said, well, can you take a look at your Nginx Reverse Proxy Manager, and let's find out if you're doing anything different from me. And he looked at it, and sure enough, he wasn't doing anything different. And, he'd been running the product a long time like I had, but I thought it was interesting how, this problem popped up. So a little bit more time went by, and as it turned out, now we're at 2 weeks or even 2 weeks plus a day or two. And that was when I had the discussion with Brian, open source advocate, and we just looked at everything that was really plausible in all of this, and it was kind of like, all right, so we want to have the newest version of Discourse, and we want to make sure that we install it, that it follows all the processes that they tell you to do out there on their page. Same thing with Rocket Chat. My focus was on building the applications because I thought that either I had taken an upgrade that had corrupted something, and especially since my problems with those two products were immediately tied to when I did the upgrade for the Rocket Chat database and when I did the upgrade for the Discourse forum version to Beta 4. Well, as it turned out, neither of those products had problems. And what I discovered later on was the very last thing I did was I was able to build a Discourse from scratch, and I imported my database backup, which I said didn't work before, but finally it ultimately did. And it was squirrely in the way that it works. So of course, I even blamed Discourse that much more, because I said, this is really silly that I'm having problems with Discourse, because I shouldn't be having problems. It's up to the latest version, but you know what? This latest version surely has a bug, right? Well, after my conversation with Brian, I decided to create a brand new instance of Nginx Proxy Manager. So I noticed that Nginx Proxy Manager, and this is a really common product that everybody uses out there, Nginx Proxy Manager. And I noticed that the version of Nginx Proxy Manager that is current is something like, let's do a get started here. It was something like some very minor version number in any case. But the way I had done the application was with a Docker run command. And the reason I'd done that is because I was running it on my QNAP NAS. So when I decided to build this new Nginx Proxy Manager, I instead created a LXD instance, and I used a Docker Compose, as you can see here on screen. And I went ahead and created one entry. The first entry I created was for Discourse. And when I created that entry for Discourse, I went out and immediately tried to edit a document that had a graphic in it, and I had 0 problems at all. It worked. So the second test that I made was to do a creation of a new document in my Discourse forum that had a graphic in it, and that worked also. So they could not upload file error, and the 500 error went away. So the next entry I made in my Nginx Proxy Manager was an entry for Rocket Chat. Went over to the Rocket Chat instance that I had running forever, went to upload a graphic. The graphic uploaded perfectly. And the third and last thing that I did was create a uTransfer entry. And when I access my uTransfer, or actually I had the uTransfer out there to begin with, but I made an entry in Nginx Proxy Manager to point to the existing container. And when I did that and fired it up, sure enough, I could drag and drop files and everything was working fine. So the thing to really understand, and I've had this happen to me more than once, and I made this video because I wanted you all to be aware of it. Nginx Proxy Manager is a great product, and it runs terrifically. It has great log messages, but for whatever reason, the version of Nginx Proxy Manager that I had been running and not touched for literally months had suddenly decided to cause problems. And of course, I did obvious things like restart Nginx Proxy Manager, shut it down, start it back up again, but it still made no difference. And plus, I had no real reason to point my finger at it, because after all, the problem with Discourse happened immediately after a Discourse upgrade, and I didn't have that problem prior to the upgrade. And my problem with Rocket Chat occurred several days after that, and it occurred kind of in a vacuum, if you will. It occurred, though, right after the upgrade to the Rocket Chat MongoDB database and database engine. So, of course, I pointed my finger at that. When I saw the third problem with uTransfer, and I realized that all these things seem to be web-related problems, I kind of wondered. And by the way, before I rebuilt my Nginx Proxy Manager, I went ahead and directly exposed my Discourse instance to the net going around Nginx Proxy Manager. And that's when I actually saw it work the first time and went, oh, okay, this is interesting. So Nginx Proxy Manager in the mix is causing an issue. So long and short of it, I created a LXD container, installed with Docker Compose a new version of Nginx Proxy Manager, And then all the folders that Nginx Proxy Manager uses are inside that instance. I know where they are. I actually back up, or I actually snapshot that instance of Nginx Proxy Manager anytime I make a change to it. And so now I will be able to rotate back versions. So, this really is kind of a perfect storm of events, if you will, because here I was out there trying to fix products that really didn't have a problem with them. And yet, if you look at root cause analysis, it's not always the simplest thing. It's sometimes the thing you're not looking at that can be causing an issue. So, in summary, if you self-host, keep detailed documentation on the configuration and the changes that you make. Keep backups and snapshots of your virtual machines and containers. Backup any databases or data that is external to those containers. And backup or snapshot prior to any updates, and keep those backups for an extended time to make sure that there's no fallout. Be prepared to work hard and address every detail. If you hadn't had a failure yet, eventually you will. Anyway, that's it for today. Please subscribe and like to the channel, and we'll see you next time.